This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's Check the Report podcast is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Check the Report listeners can get 20% off the first year of an annual subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. Welcome to the latest edition of Check the Report. I am your host, Vito Jerome Churko, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner from the Doc, from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, glad to have you along for the ride here. How are you doing?
Vito, always good to conversate with you. How did you enjoy covering Oakland basketball?
You know what? It was interesting. Not a big crowd at the arena, but I know a lot of the students are already, away because of Christmas vacation and whatnot, so they're spending their time far away probably from the campus of Oakland University. But a great game for Oakland basketball, huh? Blew out Towson. And really the final score doesn't do OU justice in terms of how well OU played and beat down Towson.
Yeah, you did a great job covering the game. Got a sense of how Kendrick Nunn is performing. I felt like you handled yourself pretty well, and good job for you. I really enjoyed the fact that you covered Detroit Mercy and that you're an emerging journalist, a great writer, and really a good person overall, especially somebody that I enjoy podcasting with. So very interesting stuff. Who is the featured guest this week on Check the Report?
We're going to talk to Neal Ruhl, who does everything, right? So well-versed. He's the voice of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. He called the game Wednesday night against Towson, and he also is a radio play-by-play man for the Pistons, at times as a fill-in guy for the Detroit Pistons, and he's the voice of Detroit City FC, which I don't know if you care about. You're a soccer guy, though, and that is Detroit City Football Club, which is soccer, actually, so not to be confused with American football, obviously.
Yeah, Neal does it all. Good guy, friend of the podcast. I think you'll enjoy having a conversation with him. We'll check in with him regarding Oakland, the state of college basketball, what he thought of Little Caesars Arena for the Hitachi Showcase, and obviously a guy that loves professional basketball. I'm sure he'll give us his thoughts about the Pistons. My goodness, Vito, did you watch the Dallas game? Dallas is a team that is not very highly ranked in the Western Conference, and another game where the Pistons' effort level wasn't there, and the Dallas Mavericks were able to penetrate, get any shot that they wanted, and you would have thought that the Pistons would have played a lot better. So I'm fascinated to see how Neal perceives the Pistons, what he thinks about players like Reggie Jackson, and does he think that maybe, because I think a lot of the talk around town is, we're not going to pay attention unless this team is on the verge, like the Tigers, of tanking. So I'm curious to see if Neal's going to be on Team Tank. Make sure you ask that.
We'll dial up Neal Ruhl and get him on right now. And now, joining me on this episode of Check the Report is Neal Ruhl, the voice of the Golden Grizzlies, Oakland Golden Grizzlies, radio play-by-play man, fill-in for the Detroit Pistons, and the voice of Detroit City FC. The man can do it all. He's well-versed. Neal, how's it going?
Vito, what's good, man? You guys all right?
Doing well. Glad to have you on, Neal. And, as I said, you're the voice of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, and coming off of a win against Towson on Wednesday night, let's kick it off by chatting about that, and specifically Kendrick Nunn. He scored 31 against Towson, 32 against number 2 ranked Michigan State in the Hitachi College Basketball Showcase this past Saturday, and he just has it going on hugely offensively. What's gotten into Kendrick Nunn the last 2 games, in your opinion, Neal? And how sustainable is this level of production from Kendrick the rest of the way this season?
You know what, Vito, to be honest with you, I don't think anything's really gotten into Kendrick Nunn. I mean, this is a cat, he was at Illinois, was an all-Big Ten freshman team performer, averaged just under 16 points per game at Illinois in the Big Ten. And what he's doing right now isn't really a revelation. It's just the fact of he's in Greg Kampe's offense. He's playing for Oakland, where it's high octane, and you cover the club. You're around all the games. You see it. I mean, the Golden Grizzlies play at a much higher possession rate than a lot of other teams do. They want the heat turned up, and when they get rocking and rolling offensively, there's a lot of points to be had. And Kendrick Nunn's just a guy, and I'm telling you guys what, man, and you're seeing it. When healthy, he could be the best player that's ever walked through the door at the arena for Oakland University, and that's a very bold statement given the history of Oakland basketball. I mean, they put 3 guys in the NBA. They've had 2 guys drafted. Of course, Kay Felder made it to the NBA. Keith Benson was in the NBA. Raul Marshall had a career in the NBA as well. Travis Bader is the greatest three-point shooter in the history of college basketball. Reggie Hamilton was an NCAA scoring champion, beat out Damian Lillard for the NCAA scoring title. So, I mean, this is a university and this is a basketball program that's no stranger to putting the ball in the basket. Kendrick Nunn could be the best to ever do it at Oakland. Now, he's here for one season, but he's certainly got an NBA career to think about, and he'll be a candidate to be drafted come next June. There's no doubt about that. And what you're seeing now out of Kendrick Nunn, I think, is very sustainable. It's not out of the realm of possibility for him to lead the nation in scoring. Yes, the entire nation, and that's something that's happened as relatively soon as 5 years ago when Reggie Hamilton did it. He's just another cog in that Oakland offensive wheel and a guy that can flat out shoot the basketball.
Neal, what were your takeaways being at Little Caesars Arena? 2 quality college basketball games. First game, the environment wasn't as packed as the second game. Oakland, Michigan State definitely lived up to the billing.
Yeah, and I think that the history of that series with Oakland and Michigan State has proven that. The largest crowd in the history of basketball at the Palace of Auburn Hills, where LeBron James played basketball, where the Bad Boys played basketball. The largest basketball crowd in the history of that building was the Golden Grizzlies at Michigan State. And now, for the time being anyway, the largest crowd in the history of Little Caesars Arena was to see Oakland play Michigan State. And they've delivered these basketball games. And I talked about this on the radio broadcast. I was calling the game at 11:30 a.m. with Justin Rose at WXYZ TV Channel 7. And I made the remark a lot of times during that game where I said, you look at this basketball game right now, this is like a Rocky fight in a movie, just haymakers being dealt back and forth and 4-point plays and 3-point shots and bucket after bucket, run after run against each other. And Golden Grizzlies had to lead for a good clip of that second half. And ultimately, they fell short. They just kind of ran out of gas. But that was an epic heavyweight battle. And I think it's something that the people and Tom Wilson and Olympia Entertainment, John Suzuki, all those guys, they recognize that. They're not – you don't pull off what they pulled off throughout their careers in sports in the history of this town, be it with the Pistons and moving them into the Palace and now building Little Caesars Arena. You don't pull off what they pulled off and be out of touch with what the public wants. And, again, it's tried and true. Don't believe me. Look at the numbers. The public wants this. The public wants college basketball, despite what you may hear from some of the talk radio folks in this town. College basketball fans, especially Michigan State fans, and we're seeing an emerging brand with Oakland. And you guys were there. You guys were at Little Caesars Arena. And look, I'm not making bold declarations. I was in the building. I saw it. I know. There were more Oakland fans there than there were Michigan fans. That's not my opinion. That's fact. You guys were there. You can back me up on that. That was a great environment. Now, was it 2-1 Michigan State fans? Was it, maybe 14,000 Michigan State fans and 7,000 or 8,000 Oakland fans? Yeah, that's probably the way it was. But 7,000 or 8,000 Oakland fans, man. This is a university that just turned Division I back in 1999. So, I mean, if you look at the progression of Oakland basketball and look at what they've been able to do in terms of what they've created, especially at the arena with the home environment and the attendance, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. So it was a great college basketball environment. Kudos to the people at Olympia for setting this thing up. And I got to believe, given the success of what they saw, they'll be hungry to do it again.
The only thing I would say is, now that was the best basketball game in the history of Little Caesars Arena, my first time being there at LCA's, so it was a great experience, lively atmosphere. But the first game of that Hitachi College Basketball Showcase doubleheader wasn't the greatest and the greatest turnout either. As you said, I believe more OU fans than Michigan fans, and MSU outdrew U of M fans completely. I mean, they made U of M, the U of M faithful, just look silly because of how many more MSU fans showed up for that doubleheader this past Saturday than U of M fans that showed up this past Saturday, Neal.
No, there's no question about that. And I've always scratched my head about that because I just don't get it with the Michigan basketball program. And look, a lot of people that are listening probably heard me do talk radio and stuff like that. You've heard me and my questions about Michigan football, and to some degree I've been labeled a Michigan hater, which is not true. I have friends that are coaches at Michigan. Sadie Washington was a longtime associate head coach at Oakland and joined John Beilein's staff there at Oakland. And Sadie Washington is one of my very good friends in the game, and he's a guy I try to emulate as a father and as a husband. I have the a world of respect for Sadie Washington. And John Beilein, man, I'm a big resume guy and a big proof is in the pudding guy. He took Michigan to the national championship game, and I've never understood why he hasn't garnered the support, and basketball hasn't gathered the support at Michigan at the level I feel that it should, because John Beilein is one of the best coaches in America. He's done it at every level, and his system's tried and true. And he did it at West Virginia. He did it not even in the Division I ranks. He's done it at Michigan. He's done it everywhere he's gone. So I've never understood that. But for whatever reason, the Michigan faithful, they don't roll out for basketball, certainly not to the degree that they do for football, and certainly not to the degree the Michigan State fans do for hoops.
Neal Ruhl joining us on this episode of Check the Report. Only the second edition, and Neal Ruhl is along for it. And you know what? The OU fans, it was good to see them show up as they did to a large degree this past Saturday. And because OU is a complete team, a top mid-major squad, I believe the top team in the Horizon League this season, and not only because of Kendrick Nunn and what he can do scoring the basketball, but because of a trio of outstanding fifth-year seniors in forward, Jalen Hayes, guard, Martez Walker, and then Nunn himself. So they can do it, and it's not just about Nunn, as we saw Wednesday night against Towson with Jalen Hayes contributing 25 points, Walker scoring 20. So it was really an overall complete effort offensively for OU in defeating Towson, and that's why I believe, and Greg Kampe said it himself, if healthy, this OU basketball team can be the best one he's ever coached. Now, do you agree with that sentiment that was expressed by Coach Greg Kampe this past Saturday in the post-game press conference?
Hey, I mean, you don't really have a choice, do you? I mean, you look at the production that these guys are kicking out, and it's funny, we talk about Kendrick Nunn, and Jalen Hayes, for whatever reason, gets glossed over. And Jalen Hayes got glossed over for preseason player of the year in the Horizon League, which was comical to me to see the way that went down. But whatever, that's a different story for a different day. Jalen doesn't care. I talk to him often about that. He stops me every time and says, I just don't care about that kind of stuff. I want to get to the NCAA tournament. But with all that being said, Jalen Hayes is a guy, his number may be hanging from the rafters by the time his career is over. He's up amongst the NCAA leaders right now in double-doubles. Martez Walker is really a guy that's a great story to me as well, and he can fill it up. There's another cat that's capable of getting numbers as well. We saw him go off at Clemson last year in the NIT, and that was after Jalen Hayes got hurt in the first half. The Golden Grizzlies were down by 20. Martez Walker took matters into his own hands, and he got the win in an ACC gym. Now, there are not a lot of teams locally last year that got wins in ACC gyms on the road. I mean, that's just not something that happens all that often. But the Golden Grizzlies were able to do that. Martez Walker was a big reason why that was able to happen. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of scoring, this certainly is one of the more complete Oakland teams that you've ever seen. Now, with that being said, of course, the Golden Grizzlies went to the NCAA tournament in 2010 and 2011 and went 17-1 in conference play in back-to-back years, which that's a bold statement to say because that team had 7 pros on it in 2010. 7 pros on a mid-major team, which is really unbelievable if you think about it, but that is the case. And the answer to that question will be given at the end of the season. I mean, we'll see. Is this the greatest Oakland team of all time? We'll see. If they go to the NCAA tournament, maybe make some noise in there, they can certainly stake their claim.
And Neal, as I said before, I think you believe it yourself. They look like the best team. Now, without having any play in Horizon League play yet up to this point, but looking at OU, I mean, I would have to believe they're going to end up being the best team in the Horizon League. At least on paper, they should be. Now, outside of OU, though, who do you think is the biggest threat, will emerge as the biggest threat in the Horizon League to Oakland?
It'll probably look to be a 2-horse race between Oakland and Northern Kentucky. Of course, Northern Kentucky, Oakland stumbled in the first round of the Horizon League tournament last year. Joe Louis Arena lost to Youngstown State, a team they had beat by 30 a week and a half before the tournament. But that's March Madness. That's why they call it March Madness. Now, Northern Kentucky seized that opportunity and went to the NCAA tournament and gave Kentucky everything they wanted in their first-round matchup. And I mentioned the fact Jalen Hayes got snubbed for preseason player of the year. Drew McDonald, a forward on Northern Kentucky, got that honor. So, I mean, that gives you a sense of the kind of players that Northern Kentucky has on their roster. I mean, they are a good ball club. There's certainly no question about that. Again, check the resume. They have the NCAA tournament banner hanging in their gym right now. And Northern Kentucky, for me, was always going to be a threat in the Horizon League. They're a very new institution. They're newer to the Horizon League than the Golden Grizzlies are. They're a recent addition to the league. They have facilities. They have an unbelievable arena down there in Northern Kentucky, and they're in the suburbs of Cincinnati, right at the tip of the state of Kentucky. So they have the prime location with the big city around them. They have the facilities. They, dollar for dollar, they may have the best facilities in the entire Horizon League, top to bottom. Their basketball arena is unbelievable. They have concerts in there. They have the WWE wrestling events in there. I mean, they have it all. It is a top-notch facility across the board, soccer, baseball, all of it. They're going to be a threat in the Horizon League for a long time just based on the facilities that they have, and we're seeing that already. But I would figure it'll come down to the Golden Grizzlies in Northern Kentucky. I liked UIC before the season started. I haven't really heard much about Dikembe Dixon, and he's coming back from a torn ACL. So, I mean, we'll see how he rounds back into shape. But before he got hurt, this cat was putting up numbers as a freshman in the Horizon League, and I thought that he may be the most realistic look to be the next Horizon League player in the NBA. And that's not a stretch to say because the Horizon League has consistently put guys in the NBA draft. Go back through time. Alec Peters last year drafted by the Phoenix Suns. Kay Felder got drafted by the Hawks, later got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you can go down the list and go down the row of Horizon League basketball players that have been drafted in the NBA draft. And that's why I laugh when people say, well, the Horizon League's down, the Horizon League's trending down. Vito, you go ahead and you can go ahead and look this up. Look about how many Horizon League players have been drafted to the NBA draft versus how many MAC players have been drafted to the NBA draft. It's a pretty short list for the MAC, and it's an expansive list for the Horizon League. And that tells you all you need to know because, Vito, what's it about? It's about churning out pros, and the Horizon League has done that in the NBA, and the MAC can't stack up to that. I know it's romantic, and everybody loves the MAC around here because it's Eastern and Western and Central. I'm just going off of what happened. I'm going off facts, not about what I think.
Neal, let's speak of the NBA now a little bit. And it's because, as I said earlier in this segment here on Check the Report, you're a fill-in radio play-by-play man for the Detroit Pistons. So what the heck do we make of these Detroit Pistons standing at 17-14, but just got blown out by 17 on the road to the Dallas Mavericks, the 9-23 Dallas Mavs Wednesday night. So what do we make of these Detroit Pistons currently?
Well, I mean, I can spin that and go, well, they're taking 2 of their last 3 on the road in the NBA, which is an impressive feat. I mean, when you win on the road in the NBA, you're doing something. And you can look at what the people in Vegas thought of that game. That game was a coin flip, a 1-point spread in that game either way. So, I mean, it was a coin flip. They lost, and I know people don't like the manner in which they lost, especially not getting a field goal for 7 minutes, I believe it was, of the third quarter. So I can understand that people are upset with the way it went down. But this Pistons team, I mean, they're about where we thought they were, maybe even a couple of games better. And I would ask you, Vito, say they lose against the Clippers in LA, say they lose against Golden State in LA, and then say they beat Dallas last night and say they beat Denver at home. The record's still the same, but people's tune might be a little bit different about them. They say, they're solid. They're a little bit better than we thought they were going to be. It's funny, the teams that they've beaten, that almost hurts them when they lose a game because of the perspective that people take on them. So if you flip the script in those games, nobody would be saying anything right now. They'd be saying, the Pistons, it's a pretty solid year so far. So, I mean, in that respect, you have to look at the way that they got there. Do you like losing at home to Denver? No, certainly you don't. And Stan Van Gundy did, and he said as much. And last night he said the same thing. And, for this Pistons team, you can't lose games at home against. That's the one that bothers me, is losing at home against Denver. And then I think if you talk to Andre Drummond, if you talk to Reggie Jackson, Stan Van Gundy told you. You don't have to ask him. He told you that they would be the most disappointed with that as well because that's a game that they should win. And they let that game get away. Now, they righted the ship and won a couple of games on the road. Yeah, they fell against Dallas. I would always say I would come back to what's going to go on tomorrow against the Knicks when they play in Little Caesars Arena. That's a game right now because you saw that. They went from a 4 seed to a 7 seed just due to the nature of that one loss. So with the New York Knicks coming into town sitting in the 8 seed, that becomes a bigger basketball game now. And you'll notice that. Granted, it's December. Granted, we haven't got to Christmas yet. The prototypical NBA fan doesn't really pay attention I guess, to the NBA season until Christmas Day happens. Then they start to pay attention. But you'll notice that, really that sense of how the NBA season's going as the days get punched off the calendar, the games get bigger and bigger. And I'm not saying this is a must-win game against the Knicks, but it's one of those temperature gauge games. There's no question about it. If you win this game, you feel a little bit better about yourself. And consequently, if you lose this game, more questions will be asked.
And Neal, as you said, I think you said it perfectly. The Pistons look like they're where they should be at. After starting off 14-6, I think they overachieved to a large extent. They're starting off so hot. And since coming back to earth, they look like they will end up being this kind of a squad that finishes in the top 8, but towards the bottom of the top 8 in the Eastern Conference by the end of the season, maybe finishing 7th in the Eastern Conference. And with that being said, the best case scenario, realistically, as a 7th seed, 8th seed, you're going to get bounced in the first round. And maybe you upset a team in the first round. So I've got to ask you, Neal, and a lot of people have brought it up recently, should the Pistons just start tanking here and trade off everybody because of the fact that the best case scenario for the Pistons going, into this year's postseason is a first-round exit, it looks like, and that's not a pretty thing from afar as a Pistons fan. And I think when you're just analyzing the Pistons and what's the best case scenario for the Pistons as well.
Well, I think the best case scenario would get to Avery Bradley back healthy. We've talked about this loss yesterday in this recent slide. Avery Bradley's missed a couple of games. Now, they were 14-6. Everybody was healthy, and they've run into some health issues as of late. So I think the best case scenario is to get Avery Bradley back healthy, get Reggie Jackson back to the way that he was 2 years ago. And I really think that injury took a lot out of Reggie Jackson last year. And this has been a basketball team that kind of goes the way Reggie Jackson goes. When he's playing well, this is a very good basketball team. And I would say, if you're looking at it, and this team was 14-6, and Avery Bradley is a difference maker. I think we can all agree on that he brings a little something to the party for the Detroit Pistons. Now, I would say your top-end scenario would be to maybe get that 5 seed, play a little bit more like you were at the beginning of the season, play a little bit better defensively, maybe sneak into that 5 seed, 4 seed, and win a playoff round. And Vito, look, what are we talking about here between the 7th seed and the 5 seed? Probably 3, 4, 5 games tops.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that's insurmountable. It's not something that's unbelievable. You can make a case that they wouldn't, and I can make a case that they can. And both of our cases that we make are both relatively obtainable. So with all that being said, you got to see how it plays out a little bit. If you can slide into that 6 seed, 5 seed, 4 seed, now the expectations change a little bit. You want to win a playoff round, and it'll be interesting to see if that happens. If my scenario happens, where they get up into a 5 seed and maybe they pull the upset on the road and they win a playoff series, and then you play the Cavs and you get bounced by the Cavs. And look, let's be honest, are the Pistons ready to contend for a championship right now? No, they're not. So therefore, is it logical to expect them to beat Cleveland? I would say no, that it's not logical. However, if you can get, I think a realistic goal is a playoff series win. That's what you build to right now. And we saw this when the Pistons apex being the bad boys, then they kind of bottomed out with the teal uniforms, and then they built it back up. We saw that with the team, with the Jerry Stackhouse and the Christian Laettner years, where the goal was to get to the playoffs, and they got to the playoffs. But the goal was to win a series. Then they win a series, and they get to the conference finals. And then ultimately it built back up into a championship. It's the ebb and flows, man, of professional sports. And right now, I believe that the Pistons, they're bottoming, they bottomed out, so to say. Now they're on the rise a little bit. The goal is to get back to the playoffs and win a series. Once you do that, you let the chips fall where they may, and then you start to build. And yes, you're going to have to hit either through the draft. And look, I don't dress this up or say it's not a fairy tale. It's a long shot to hit in the NBA draft, especially when you're picking in the teens. There's usually only 4 known impact guys in an NBA draft, and that could be generous some years. But with all that being said, that's what you have to do. You get yourself in a position, you win a playoff series, then you're a player away. And then you either try to do some trade magic, which is what they did with Rasheed Wallace, or you get lucky in the draft and you hit on someone that somebody else overlooked, and that's the way you do it. Or maybe you get lucky in free agency, but that's the goal, right? Get yourself a player away, and then find out where you're at. As long as there's no regression I guess I'm happy with what's going on, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for them to win a playoff series this year.
Let me leave you with this, though, Neal. You've already spoken a bit about Reggie Jackson. Do you believe he's the starting point guard for the Pistons of the future?
Well, I mean, I'm not in player personnel, so it's only they know that answer. Only Stan Van Gundy really knows that answer. I mean, and it's one of those things. We've seen Reggie struggle, and at the same time, we've seen Reggie Jackson play well. And I think we can all agree this is a vastly different basketball team when he plays well. With all that being said, I mean, I don't know the answer to your question. It's funny to me because when Reggie Jackson signed that contract, everybody jumped out of their skin. They said, oh, my God, what kind of money are you giving this guy? And in the NBA with the TV deal and the salary climate, now all of a sudden his contract looks a lot more palatable at $17 million a year. Remember, this is a league where Timothy Mozgov's making $15 million a year. So when you have a point guard that's achieved at the level that Reggie Jackson has achieved for $17 million a year, I think you're getting a pretty good bargain right now. Now, with all that being said, what's going to happen down the road? Be honest with you, Vito, I'm not going to try to dodge your question. I'm just going to hit you with it. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question.
Well, it's hard to judge it. Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from, too, because none of us really know what's going to happen with the Pistons moving forward here in terms of, well, I think and it starts off with where they end up in the playoffs, where their seeding is.
Right.
If they end up in that fifth spot and win a first-round series, I think they stick it out with this roster moving forward. If they don't, they might deal a Reggie Jackson. So we will see, but that is a topic for another day. And Neal Ruhl, with that, I'll let you go. Thank you much for all the time, and we will speak with you again soon here.
Anytime, Vito. Love Detroit Sports Podcast. Love what all you guys are doing over there, man. It's big time, and we're all following, man. We're following the movement. No question. Thanks for having me.
Thank you much. You have a great day.
Vito, good chat with Neal. I mean, whenever you get a chance to talk to Neal Ruhl, you do get a sense of a guy that very professional and really, like I said, always tells us yes. He's like, I can count on a handful of times on my fingers how many times he's told anybody no. So good dude. Always enjoy the conversation. It doesn't seem like he's on Team Tank, though. It seems like he's on Team Ride It Out and see what happens. I can understand that. The Pistons do have a framework of a team, and the people that are against tanking will say, look, this is a team that can compete. Why would you want to potentially go 2, 3, 4 years like the Sixers, who have gone now 7, 8, 9 years trying to rebuild? There's no guarantee, but the people that say that, it's the job of the general manager, it's the job of the team president to pick the right talent. And so the part that maybe something that Neal's thinking too is that, do you trust Stan Van Gundy to go out there and pick the ingredients? When you look at Stanley Johnson, when you look at Henry Allenson, Luke Kennard, right now it's early in their careers, but they're not lighting the world on fire. So it's a little bit tough to go in Team Tank because the Pistons don't have exactly the best history of drafting quality people. So it's interesting, but I oppose Neal. I definitely am on Team Tank because I don't see the trajectory of championship with this squad.
Well, it's a first-round exit for the Pistons, more than likely, as a 7th, 8th seed. Now, Neal was making the argument that, well, if they make the playoffs as a 5th seed, well, then they got a shot to win a first-round series, and then you never know what could happen for the Pistons in the postseason. Thing is, more than likely, and as they're, currently slotted in the Eastern Conference playoffs, well, they're part of the top 8, so they would be in the playoffs as of today. But the thing is, the 7th seed, and you're playing the Knicks on Friday night, a nice test for yourself at Little Caesars Arena. If you don't beat the Knicks, and you keep losing, and if you lose to lesser competition especially, you're going to be the 8th seed or on the outside looking in for the playoffs in this season. So for me, they're not good enough to win a championship. When you're not good enough to win an NBA title, I think you have to really, really look at the possibility of tanking. And that's because then you can get those top-tier players to build around at the top of the draft, number 1, number 2 pick, number 3 pick, and with the lottery, you don't know where you'll be slotted, but you guarantee yourself a much better shot of picking in the top 3 to top 5 when you tank. You go for broke, and that's why I think the Pistons should do that, and also because of the fact, once again, that the Pistons aren't going anywhere with the roster as it's currently structured, especially with Reggie Jackson running the floor.
All right, Vito, good episode of Check the Report. I look forward to future guests having good conversations. Good stuff, sir.
Thank you much, Doc. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye-bye.